Chicago's deadliest mob boss offered Jimmy Cliff $2 million to sing at his private party. Jimmy's Rastafarian response triggered a war that ended organized crime's Las Vegas empire. It was November 12, 1977. At the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas, Jimmy Cliff had just finished a successful three-night residency, introducing American audiences to the spiritual power of reggae music. He was in his dressing room, preparing to fly back to Jamaica, when two men in expensive suits knocked on his door. The men didn't look like typical music industry executives. They were too well-dressed, too serious, and too comfortable with the kind of authority that comes from never being told no. When Jimmy opened the door, the larger man spoke with a thick Chicago accent. "Mr. Cliff, my name is Vincent Romano. I represent Mr. Tony Castellano. He would like to speak with you about a business opportunity." Jimmy had never heard of Tony Castellano, but something about these men made him uncomfortable. In Jamaica, he had learned to trust his instincts about danger, and every instinct he had was telling him to be careful. "I'm sorry, but I don't know who that is," Jimmy said politely. "If it's about booking shows, you'll need to speak with my manager." Vincent smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "Mr. Castellano doesn't work through managers, Mr. Cliff. He works directly with artists, and what he's offering you is much more than a regular booking." Against his better judgment, Jimmy agreed to hear what they had to say. Vincent and his partner, whose name Jimmy never learned, explained that Tony the Butcher Castellano was the most powerful organized crime leader in the Midwest. He controlled illegal gambling, loan sharking, and protection rackets throughout Chicago, and he was expanding his operations into Las Vegas entertainment. Tony was planning a private party at his estate outside Chicago to celebrate his daughter Maria's engagement. It would be attended by every major crime family leader in America, a gathering of the most dangerous men in the country. And Tony wanted Jimmy Cliff to provide the entertainment. 1 hour of performance, Vincent explained. 5 songs, maybe 6. Mr. Castellano is offering $2 million cash for one night's work. Jimmy was stunned by the amount. $2 million was more money than most reggae artists made in their entire careers. It would set him up financially for life, allow him to support his family and community in Jamaica, and fund every musical project he had ever dreamed of pursuing. But something about the offer felt wrong. Jimmy had built his career on the spiritual foundation of Rastafarianism, which taught that money and material success were meaningless compared to spiritual integrity and moral righteousness. The idea of performing for criminals, even wealthy ones, conflicted with everything he believed. "I appreciate the offer," Jimmy said carefully, "but I don't think I'm the right artist for your boss's party. Maybe you should contact someone else." Vincent's expression hardened. "Mr. Cliff, I don't think you understand. This isn't a request. Mr. Castellano has already told his guests that you'll be performing. The invitations have been sent out. People are excited to hear the famous reggae star sing for Tony's daughter." Jimmy felt a chill run down his spine. He was being told that he didn't have a choice, that his consent didn't matter, that Tony Castellano had decided Jimmy would perform, and that was the end of the discussion. "I'm sorry," Jimmy said firmly, "but I can't do it. I don't perform for people who make their living through violence and crime. It goes against my spiritual beliefs." Vincent stood up, his face showing the kind of anger that Jimmy suspected had intimidated countless people over the years. "Mr. Cliff, you don't seem to understand who you're dealing with. Tony Castellano is not a man who accepts no for an answer. When he wants something, he gets it. Period. Jimmy had grown up in the tough neighborhoods of Kingston, Jamaica. He had seen violence, poverty, and desperation. He had watched powerful men try to intimidate people who couldn't fight back. But he had also learned from his Rastafarian faith that spiritual strength was more powerful than any physical threat. "I understand exactly who I'm dealing with," Jimmy responded, his voice calm but unwavering. "And my answer is still no. I don't care how much money you're offering or how powerful your boss thinks he is. I won't compromise my spiritual beliefs for anyone." Vincent looked shocked. He clearly wasn't used to people standing up to Tony Castellano's demands, especially when $2 million was on the table. He leaned forward, lowering his voice to a menacing whisper. "Mr. Cliff, I hope you understand what you're walking away from. This kind of money doesn't come around twice, and Mr. Castellano doesn't make offers like this to just anyone. You're making a mistake that you might regret." Jimmy stood up, walked to his dressing room door, and opened it. "Gentlemen, I think we're done here. Please tell Mr. Castellano that I'm honored by his interest, but I won't be available for his party. I wish him and his daughter well." Vincent and his partner left without another word, but Jimmy could see in their faces that this conversation was far from over. In the organized crime world, refusing Tony Castellano wasn't just declining a business opportunity. It was an act of defiance that demanded consequences. Over the next several days, Jimmy received phone calls at his hotel, his management office, and even at his home in Jamaica. The messages were always the same. Tony Castellano was giving him one more chance to reconsider, and if he didn't accept the offer, there would be serious consequences. Jimmy's manager, David Chen, was terrified. "Jimmy, these people don't make idle threats. Maybe we should just do the show, take the money, and forget this ever happened." But Jimmy was resolute. "David, if I perform for this man, I'm telling the world that my spiritual beliefs are for sale. I'm saying that Rastafarianism is just a performance, not a way of life. I can't do that." The pressure campaign escalated quickly. Jimmy's concerts in Chicago and Detroit were mysteriously canceled when venue owners received security concerns from unnamed sources. Radio stations in several major markets stopped playing his music. Record stores in cities with significant organized crime presence pulled his albums from their shelves. Tony Castellano was demonstrating his power, showing Jimmy that refusing his offer would have consequences that extended far beyond just missing out on $2 million. But Jimmy had something that Tony hadn't encountered before. A spiritual foundation that was stronger than fear, greed, or intimidation. On November 28, 1977, Jimmy made a decision that shocked everyone in the music industry. Instead of quietly backing down or finding some compromise with Tony Castellano, he called a press conference at the Beverly Hills Hotel and went public with the entire story. "I want everyone to know," Jimmy announced, to a room full of reporters, "that I was offered $2 million to perform for a known criminal, and I refused. I refused because my Rastafarian faith teaches me that spiritual integrity is more valuable than any amount of money. I refused because music should uplift people's souls, not entertain people who profit from violence and suffering." Jimmy continued, "If Tony Castellano wants to retaliate against me for this decision, so be it. But I won't let organized crime control who I perform for or what I stand for. Jah protects those who stand for righteousness, and I'm not afraid of any man who builds his power on fear and violence." The press conference made national news. Jimmy Cliff, a reggae artist from Jamaica, was openly defying one of America's most powerful crime bosses and daring him to retaliate. It was unprecedented in the entertainment industry. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Tony Castellano was furious that his private business had been made public. In the organized crime world, being publicly challenged and disrespected was unacceptable. Tony's reputation depended on everyone believing that he could force anyone to do anything he wanted. Within 48 hours of Jimmy's press conference, Tony made a decision that would ultimately destroy his entire criminal empire. He put a $500,000 contract on Jimmy Cliff's life and made it known throughout the underworld that killing the reggae singer would be considered a favor to the Castellano crime family. But Tony had made a critical miscalculation. Jimmy Cliff wasn't just a musician. He was an international figure with fans and supporters around the world. The Rastafarian community, civil rights organizations, and music industry leaders all rallied to his defense. More importantly, the FBI had been trying to build a case against Tony Castellano for years without success. Jimmy's public revelation of Tony's attempted coercion gave federal agents the opening they needed to launch a comprehensive investigation into organized crime's infiltration of the entertainment industry. FBI agent Patricia Morrison, who had been tracking Tony's operations for 5 years, later said, "Jimmy Cliff's courage in going public gave us the justification we needed to wiretap phones, surveil meetings, and investigate financial transactions that had been off-limits before." His refusal to be intimidated became the key that unlocked our entire organized crime investigation. The federal investigation revealed a massive network of criminal activity throughout Las Vegas entertainment venues. Tony Castellano and other crime bosses had been using threats, violence, and financial manipulation to control which artists performed where, taking percentages of earnings, and using entertainment venues to launder money from illegal activities. As the investigation expanded, it became clear that Jimmy's refusal to perform at Tony's party had exposed a system of criminal control that had been operating in the entertainment industry for decades. The legal consequences for Tony Castellano were severe. In March 1979, he was arrested, along with 43 members of his crime family, on charges including racketeering, extortion, conspiracy, and attempted murder. The evidence collected during the investigation that started with Jimmy's press conference was overwhelming. During Tony's trial, prosecutors revealed that his attempt to force Jimmy Cliff to perform was just one example of how organized crime families controlled entertainment in Las Vegas and other major markets. The case became a landmark prosecution that permanently changed how the entertainment industry dealt with organized crime influence. Tony Castellano was sentenced to life in prison without parole. His crime family was dismantled, their assets seized, and their control over Las Vegas entertainment venues was broken forever. But the most significant impact of Jimmy's stand came in the form of industry-wide changes. Major entertainment venues implemented new security protocols to prevent organized crime infiltration. Artist management companies developed procedures to identify and reject bookings that might involve criminal organizations. Record labels created policies to protect their artists from coercion and intimidation. Jimmy Cliff became a symbol of artistic integrity, triumphing over criminal intimidation. His willingness to sacrifice $2 million and risk his life rather than compromise his spiritual beliefs inspired other artists to stand up against various forms of industry corruption and exploitation. In 1985, Congress passed the Entertainment Industry Integrity Act, largely inspired by Jimmy's case. The legislation provided federal protection for artists who refused to perform for criminal organizations and established severe penalties for anyone who attempted to coerce entertainers through threats or violence. Jimmy continued his musical career without ever compromising his Rastafarian principles. His refusal to perform for Tony Castellano became part of reggae folklore, taught as an example of how spiritual strength can overcome material temptation and physical intimidation. In 2010, Jimmy was honored by the United Nations for his contribution to artistic freedom and his courage in standing up against organized crime. During his acceptance speech, he reflected on the 1977 confrontation that changed his life in the entertainment industry. When Tony Castellano offered me $2 million, Jimmy said, he thought he was making me an offer I couldn't refuse. But Jah had already given me everything I needed to refuse any offer that required me to compromise my spiritual beliefs. Money can't buy integrity, and fear can't destroy faith. The former Sands Hotel, where Jimmy's confrontation with Tony's representatives began, now displays a plaque commemorating the place where artistic integrity defeated organized crime. The plaque includes a quote from Jimmy: "Some things are not for sale, and a righteous soul is one of them." Tony the Butcher Castellano died in federal prison in 1998, his criminal empire destroyed, and his legacy reduced to serving as an example of what happens when organized crime tries to control artists who refuse to be controlled. Jimmy Cliff's two-word response to Tony's demand, "Not interested," became one of the most powerful statements in music history, proving that spiritual conviction can triumph over any amount of money, any threat of violence, and any display of worldly power. The story reminds us that true strength comes not from the ability to intimidate others, but from the courage to stand for principles that are bigger than personal safety or financial gain. If this incredible story of spiritual courage defeating organized crime moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more amazing tales of artists who chose integrity over easy money. Share this video with someone who believes that standing up for your values is worth any sacrifice. Have you ever had to choose between financial gain and personal principles? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to check out our other videos about the moments when music legends prove that some things really aren't for sale.